Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. This is the Science Dispatch Podcast. My name is Cameron English. That handsome young man is Dr. Chuck Dinnerstein, Director of Medicine at the American Council on Science and Health. Chuck, it's very nice to be with you.
Nice to see you today, despite the fact that you're under the weather, inclement.
I'm okay. I've got the clamminess, the cold sweat, which is weird, and I can't taste things. But, it is what it is. Life goes on, right?
So, well, in certain households, not tasting things is a what we would call a mitzvah, a good thing.
I'm going to leave that one all the way alone.
That's not true for my wife. I just wanted to
somewhere out there, not for my.
Yeah, no, it's an ethnocultural reference. That's all.
Very good. Okay. Well, we've got an article that you wrote for the website. This is called "Insulin Sensitivity Has a Bedtime." And let me read the introduction here, and then you can break down what's going on. So you write, new research shows your body wants breakfast at sunrise, not sushi at midnight. You might think that when you eat, I'm going to get this. You might think that when you eat is just a matter of schedule, but that in fact is not true. Your metabolism has its own, far more opinionated internal clock. A recent twin study suggests that aligning your meal times with your circadian rhythm could be the missing ingredient in the quest for healthful eating, better glucose control, and weight management. That sounds like the headline from Shape magazine that I see in the grocery store. But nevertheless, it looks like we might have some good genetic data to deal with here. So explain what's going on here, Doctor.
Well, there is a large push. Well, there's a large trajectory of individuals that believe when we eat and for how long will make a difference in terms of metabolism and weight management. So as a GLP-1 user, I can report that if you eat at a normal pace, that medication will make you feel full sooner than you would have if you were not taking the medicine. I will also tell you as a GLP-1 user that you can cheat and eat really, really quickly as much as you want before that fullness starts. So there is something to be said when we talk about for how long we eat and at what time of day. There's a whole group of diets that limit the eating to a 4-hour window or an 8-hour window or a 1-hour window. And in most of those cases, that kind of time shift has really to do with how many calories you can manage to stuff in rather than anything related to time. That having been said, this study looked at whether our circadian rhythms, the natural rhythms that we have in our body, make a difference in our metabolism and to what degree they are hereditary or not, and that's why they did a study working with twins. So circadian rhythms are something that we're beginning to appreciate more and more. I guess they're right behind the microbiome in terms of interesting, exciting things to look at. We all do have a rhythm to our day. We talk about the night owls or the morning doves. You can think about it that way. I routinely get up at 4:30 in the morning. I've been doing it for 40 years. And then I fall over around 8 o'clock at night. Whereas there are people that, like to sleep in bed till 10 and are up till midnight or 1 or 2 in the morning. So we do know that there's those differences. We also know that our circadian clocks, which are run by a very interesting set of 6 enzymes, are reset every day. Basically, if you're up for sunrise, that resets your clock. And that allows you to have some kind of steady state over the day. The old saying that you should breakfast like a king and have dinner like a pauper is the question that these researchers wanted to look at. And what they did is they took a series of twins and they put them on a standard diet and looked at the times of day that they ate. And then they discovered that there was an advantage in terms of your metabolism for having the majority of your calories earlier in the day. That's really the bottom line. of the study. So that idea that you should have that the breakfast is the most important meal of the day, that was spread by Kellogg's rather than scientists, but that if you can have the bulk of your calories at the beginning of the day, your body is better able to process them because your circadian rhythms in terms of glucose management are more in line with that configuration. They did find that there was both a hereditary portion of this, or at least the portion of this was under the control of your heredity, about 40 or 50%. And there was, of course, some control of this metabolic activity based on where you live, your ethnicity, and your culture, as one would expect. So the takeaway messages for them was that on a hereditary basis, if you were an early riser, that was the best time to get your calories on board if you can manage it.
So, and I haven't looked at the paper, full disclosure. So is the idea that you become less insulin sensitive as the day goes on?
Yeah, you're both less insulin sensitive, more insulin resistant.
Okay.
As your circadian rhythm goes on. And the way they established that was they established what was the midpoint in your sleep cycle, whatever hour that might be, and they also compared that to the midpoint of your wake cycle. And the more that you ate before the midpoint of your wake cycle, the better your metabolic response was. And the better your metabolic response was, the more likely you were to lose weight and keep it off. But I hasten to say that what that midpoint was different for different groups of people. For the person that was going to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and getting up at 10, their midpoint is 6 o'clock in the morning. So their circadian day began at 6 o'clock in the morning. So now they're up at 10 o'clock in the morning and they go again till 2 o'clock in the morning. So I'm doing it. So that's at 5 o'clock is the midpoint of their day. So calories that are eaten between when they get up and 5, they're going to be handled a lot better than the calories that are eaten from 5 o'clock.
So I don't know if they get into this, but I wonder to what extent these variables are independent or interconnected. So like if you don't sleep well, I think there's pretty good data on this, and it's certainly I can relate to it. Like when you sleep poorly, you're more inclined to eat food that you should, and you're probably inclined to eat more, which is a negative feedback, right? Because I think that can affect your sleep, which can make your diet worse. So in other words, it's the same thing with like are you eating too much because your hormones are out of whack? Are your hormones out of whack because you're eating too much? It's the same sort of,
Well, it's chicken or egg, but I think it's probably chicken and egg. I think that old idea that it has to be one or the other is probably something that we can put aside. I think that there is some of that crosstalk back and forth, but they do relate to one another, and there is a feedback in both directions for that. So I think that's there. I find that this whole concept of circadian rhythms is getting to be, as I said, it's getting to be an area of interesting research. There is literature on cancer chemotherapy that it's more effective when given earlier in your circadian cycle. You can. I don't understand why either. It's empirical data we're seeing. Part of the problem, of course, is as I tried to describe how you determine when the circadian rhythm is to say what each person's circadian clock is, and they spent a lot of time in the study. It was a small study to do that because they know what time these people were getting up on average, so they could establish for themselves what they called the circadian clock. But if you simply say, well, the clock begins at midnight, that's not really the case, and that may throw off a lot of the old studies. So it does point out in an interesting way how difficult it is to measure what we call circadian rhythms. Though I'm sure at some point there'll be a biomarker and a blood test, but I'm not sure people are going to want to get up in the middle of the night for the blood test.
I can't help but reach the conclusion, the more studies like this we talk about, it seems like our model of public health is becoming less viable every year. Because, you can't make population recommendations anymore if this data has any merit, is what I'm getting. Because people are so different. There's genetic influences, their lifestyles. I mean, even when they go to sleep and when they wake up. You know what I mean? So, as you said with breakfast, right? To tell people it's the most important meal of the day, it's like maybe if you're building a railroad in 1860, then sure, I get that. But,
I think
what do you think?
I think you can still deliver a public health message, but they become increasingly more generalized and therefore somewhat difficult to apply to your own individual care. So I think that, the take-home message here is, again, breakfast like a king, dinner like a pauper. That's the public health message. But to be able to truly personalize it to yourself, you need some more information. And that information can be gathered, in this case, from looking at when you go to sleep and how many hours you sleep and what you might consider the midpoint and what you might consider the midpoint of your day. And then that will define to you when breakfast should be taking place. So instead of calling it breakfast, we can call it the first meal of the day. Okay. And that time will vary. So maybe the brunch crew on Sunday is doing the right thing. As I end the article, I'm saying, that, again, as a boomer and a member of the, Blue Plate Special group that comes in for early bird food, we were way ahead on the curve on this one.
There you go, right? When you go to Denny's, eat your moons over my hammy.
Ancient person wisdom.
There
once
you go.
Again.
Yeah. Eat your breakfast sandwich at 4:30 p.m.
And you're done.
All right, very good. So maybe when you see public health advice, take it as a guideline and then adapt it to your circumstances instead of, I have to get up and eat my cornflakes. I'm going to die. All right, very good.
Kellogg's would be proud of you for that.
Well, I was going to add, this is the same company that at one point told people not to eat sweet food because they'd masturbate too much. So you remember that?
I don't remember that. I thought that was the Graham people.
Was it? That's right. I'm sorry, Mr. Kellogg's.
Sorry to the Kellogg's brothers, because the Kellogg's brothers broke up over putting sugar on the flakes.
Okay, I may have conflated the stories. I thought the story was
the Graham people were the ones that were concerned about onasm, the self-pleasuring that interfered with your eating of the Graham cracker itself.
Yeah. I don't exactly remember how it worked. It was like if the food's bland enough, then you won't be tempted to torture yourself.
You'll be so depressed you won't want to do anything.
All right, everybody, there you go. There's your life advice for the day. Once again, the article is called Insulin Sensitivity Has a Bedtime. This is by our own Dr. Chuck Dinerstein. That is at acsh.org. When you go to the website, click the subscribe tab, punch in your email address. We'll send you the stories we publish. The ones you read are usually the ones we talk about. Be sure to follow us on social media. It's at ACSH.org on X. Everywhere else, it's ACSH Matter of Facts, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. That's all hosted by our colleague Anna Doloski. She does little infographics, 1-minute videos breaking down the web's most pressing science and health topics. And speaking of which, if you have questions about science and health, we're going to do a whole episode where we tackle your questions. So feel free to post those on our social media. And then our always wise and experienced Dr. Dinerstein will take a crack at answering your questions. And Chuck loves when I say that because he doesn't know the answers to everything, believe it or not. He knows lots, but not everything. So
the family motto, often wrong, never in doubt.
It's a good way to live. Good way to live. All right. Thank you for joining us. As always, everybody, we'll see you next time.